When the smoke clears, we're still standing.
Bulldog 3-3, Apache 8 November, fire for effect, over. Enemy OP on Hilltop, over.
When the smoke clears, we're still standing.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Everlasting Veteran Podcast. I am your host, Ryan Landry. I am joined in studio with the one and only Scott-so Freyer.
What's up, guys?
Man, you know, we've been trying to make this work for a little bit.
Yes, sir.
And I am glad we finally got to sit down.
Yeah, I'm looking for an opening in my super busy schedule
Yeah.
to get down here. And now that you got your studio going on, and then I said, hey, I got Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Let's rock it this week.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those things, we talked about it. Busy schedules, unless you do this full time, you know, and I got a bunch of equipment in front of me, and it'd be nice to have somebody on the backside just to take care of that.
Just
And,
to push buttons
you
for
know,
you.
you're just the talent. You come in and you talk on the mic, and you know, you be done. But you know what? I actually do love kind of doing all this kind of stuff. But it would be a lot easier.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, you've seen some of the episodes and stuff. We dive into, you know, mental health. We dive into you know, overall well-being, being, you know, best version of yourself. We're not all perfect, you know, but it, you know, trying to get to 100% just means that we're continuing to learn and grow, you know. And you know, it's one of those things you never know, and we said this before, you never know what you're going to be able to take from somebody else, you know. And you 24 years Navy, you know, how was that?
Listen, I'm like everybody else that's ever done it, who was a lifer. It had its ups and downs. I would not say I will go back and say, oh, every minute of it was great. I wish I could go back today, because that's not the case. There was obviously times where I hated it, but there was so many times where I absolutely loved it, and I would go back today if I was able to. I'm too old now. I'm in the books as officially retired now after my 30 years, and I would go back if I could be a young man again. I would make the same decision.
Yeah.
You know, the Navy was good to me. The military in general was good to me. You know, I grew up like in the literal sense. I went in there as a punk high school kid. Knew I wanted to serve. I didn't want to go to college. I was not a good student. I like sports, but I just didn't want to go and waste my parents' money going to college. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna serve. I want to go. I come from a family of people who served. My father, my grandfather, my uncle, all my uncles basically served. Vietnam. My grandfather was in World War II. So, you know, I felt like it was my duty. It was a calling, I guess you could say. I hate to use that as kind of cliche, but I kind of felt that, you know, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. So, you know, I kind of wanted to go play in the woods with a gun. That's kind of what I wanted to do, but my mom was not a fan. And listen, I knew before my senior year even started, I was already signed up. You know, it's my 17th birthday. The recruiter came to my house, and my parents signed the paperwork when I was 17. So I went to boot camp when I was 17. So I kind of wanted to go. I said, be a Marine. I wanted to be a Marine or be in the Army, but my parents were like, yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Let's do something else, because my family, Navy, Army, we had no Marines, no jarheads in my family, but it was Coast Guard, a lot of Army.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather was Army Air Corps before the predecessor to the Air Force. So, I kind of didn't know what I wanted. And then they said, well, go to the Navy. So I knew the Navy had all kinds of cool stuff. I can still play with guns. Thought about going to Navy SEALs. But then when I got to the recruiter, he's like, no, you should go submarines. I'm like, we have those. Like, I mean, I'm from Jersey. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, Navy
Right.
to me is Earl Naval Weapon Station, where like you see ships coming in and out. You don't see submarines. So I kind of didn't even realize we had submarines. And so that sounds kind of cool. Will you give me a gun? Or like, you know, a recruiter? They're like, oh yeah, my recruiter was a nuke. And for anybody who's watching that was a Navy, who especially a submariner, you know the nukes.
Right.
So that's my loathing for nukes. That's where it started.
Yep.
And he was like, oh yeah, you know, the typical, you can do all that. And I said, okay, well, sign me up. And you know, and I told this story at my my retirement ceremony. And the day I left for MEPS to go away to boot camp, and you pick your in the Army they call the MOS or the other services, and you pick your rate in the Navy.
Yeah.
And my dad says to me, "Listen, son, you're going to go do a lot of cool things, but pick a job that you can actually translate to something cool on the outside, like something you're going to enjoy doing. So when this is all done, you'll have something to fall back on."
Right.
I was like, you know, medical field, engineering field, you know, something like that. So I said, okay, yeah, no problem, Dad. I get there and they put the big shiny red button in front of me. I'm like, you want to be a torpedo man? I'm like, what is that? I'm like, oh, you get to play with guns, missiles, torpedoes. I'm like, sign me up. Where do I put my name? And I went home that night. It was the night before I shipped off. And they're like, so my mom and dad were like, so what did you do? What did you pick? I'm like, Dad, I'm going to go be a submarine torpedo man. And he said, what? What? what do you mean? What is that? So I kind of explained to him what I kind of heard. All I heard was guns, bombs, missiles. So I said, hey, your security on the ship, this is what you do. And that's what I wanted to do.
Right.
And they were like, all right, well, whatever. And Barry was telling that same story almost 24 years to the day later on. And I don't think my dad can believe I actually remembered that, but I did. It stuck with me my whole career.
Yeah.
And I say, find something that you're going to do that translates to the outside. Now, listen, I still work for the Navy. I'm a government employee, and I still work for the Navy, representing at the shipyard, overseeing building of submarines. And I'm an engineer, and I oversee the building of torpedo tube systems. So what I did in the military, it translates to something cool that I do outside. So to make a short story long, what I did, I loved my time in the service. Not every second was, you know, rainbows and unicorn farts like everybody else. But I would never change a thing because it took me places. It showed me things. It taught me about myself. But what it was about was the people that you meet, the people that become your friends.
Right. Your
And
second family.
you're really, I mean,
Yeah.
I have some of the best friends of my entire life I've known since my first ship,
Yeah.
which was 4.5 months after I came in the Navy. I went to my first submarine, and I'm still very close with the men that I served with on that ship.
Yeah. Now, do you think that I talk to a lot of people, and I feel the same way? Is that first duty assignment?
Yeah.
Right. Is always going to be the one that like sticks with you. You know.
Oh yeah.
Especially, I mean, it hits a little bit different. Like, you know, for me, you know, the speed of active duty, then going National Guard, the speed of it and everything kind of like hit me differently, you know, because it's something different. It's not what you're used to. You know, there's a lot of good National Guard reservists out there, but there's also a lot more of the not so.
Right.
You know, and that portrays a bad name on everybody else that's actually doing the job just to the same ability as people that are on active duty.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I got to National Guard unit in Rhode Island because that was the closest for artillery. And it was an eye opener, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, we would on deployment be like, oh, the nasty girls are here, you know, like that was just, you know, Navy makes fun of Army,
Yep,
Marine,
yep.
you know, back and forth, you know, and that was just the thing,
Right.
you know, and you never really grasp the concept, you know, until you walk in those shoes, you know, and you're
Mhm.
like, and I went to them, you know, as a fresh NCO, and you know, a lot of those guys been there for 6, 8 years part time. You know, there's a lot of active duty guys that were full-time National Guard, completely different.
Right.
You know, so there's so many different dynamics that go into state level, you know, military. But my time as an artilleryman on active duty, when I got to my first duty station, those dudes that I communicate with, I saw like every time I post something, they're my number one supporters.
Yeah, that's always the way it is. It's always the way you'll have those friends, those gentlemen that I served with on my first ship, the USS Sea Devil. We saw a lot. We did a lot together. We saw a lot together. And you could take away something, I guess, from every duty station, every ship that I served on. There was something, right, that you had, that only you had with your shipmates and your crew. But that first one, those are the men that taught me how to be a submariner. Things that I learned on that ship that, I mean, today you would not learn on a submarine today because of the way political situation that we're in. The climate, the social climate, things that I did and learned back then, unacceptable today. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Frowned upon.
Yeah. Her feelings report.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, listen, there's always going to be some people that don't, and we respected that. If there was guys that didn't want to play,
right?
You respected that. You didn't give them a hard time about it, but they weren't in. They understood, and it was understood, right? There was a circle, and if you weren't part of that circle because you didn't participate in the games or the things that we were doing, then you weren't part of the circle. Like, so when we did things, you were kind of excluded.
Yeah.
Now, it didn't change anything. Like, I still had your back.
Right.
When you know, when it went down, if it went down, you're still a brother.
Right.
Whether or not you participated in the activities that we participated in didn't make a damn to me. You were still my brother.
Right.
It was just like a social thing, kind of.
Yeah.
And that's, you guys, I know this in the Army, and then they all have your own traditions and the things that you do, like tacking on your when you first get promoted, you get your first become an NCO, you get your blood stripes in the Marines.
Yeah, or your combat action badge, stuff like
Submarine
that.
warfare pin, you get it tacked on. You know what I mean? Guys didn't participate. Now it's assault. You can't do it.
Right.
It's illegal.
Yeah.
You know, and but back then it was it stupid? Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Punching somebody as hard as you possibly can in the chest.
Yeah.
With two things that had pins in the back. Yeah, that was dumb.
Well,
there was a rite of passage.
There was I don't know, I don't remember where it was, but it was a few years back when things started to change. It's because, you know, social media became more prevalent and posting stuff and everything else.
Right.
And they actually recorded the soldier. I think he ended up dying or ended up having a heart condition afterwards or something like that, you know, because, like, granted, you know, there's tradition, you know, and there's like, quote, like, hey, welcome to the club.
Right. You always have that guy that wants to take it to the next level.
Yeah. There's
get too far.
There's a difference between, like, you know, busting balls and, you know, like truly like downgrading somebody.
Right.
You know, and there's some people that they take such joy in it, you know.
Yeah, you always have those guys.
You know, and it's like one of those things. It's like I love the jokes and stuff like that, but you end up getting like this like toxic group. They feed off each other to the point where, almost to the point where you're just like, you know, I don't even want to talk to nobody no more. You know.
Well, let me ask you this. So that's funny you should bring that up, because this is something that I deal with a lot, social media wise. There's a lot of veterans groups out there in social media. I'm sure you know who they are, and I don't mention names.
Yeah.
But you go in these things and people are just downright disgusting. Like, listen, I consider myself to be an alpha male, right? I'm a tough guy, whatever. But you said it. There's a difference between busting balls and just being a crappy human being.
Right.
And I am of the belief, I don't like the veterans that hide behind their service as an excuse to be a shitty human being. That bothers me.
Oh,
I was like, you're just being a baby. I'm a veteran. I can be a terrible human being because I'm a veteran. No, it doesn't give you the right to be a terrible human being. In fact, you should be held to a higher standard because you're a veteran.
Absolutely.
Right? Just because you've seen some terrible things, possibly you've done and seen terrible things, does not give you the right to demean somebody else. You know what I mean? Like to minimize somebody else and what their accomplishes.
Well, like,
and I hate when I see that. When I go on social media and I see in veterans groups like people just making like the worst things that you could possibly imagine. Like I've said some pretty terrible things in my life, but even like it takes a lot to offend me. And if I'm offended, then it's pretty bad. You know what I mean? And then we say something to them like, well, we're all veterans here. Okay, so what?
Yeah. Well, so I had Marty Caproni on. He's a stand-up comedian. And I met him at Comics Roadhouse. I'm like, hey, you want to come on the podcast? And I told him everlasting veteran. He's like, you said the word veteran, and he's like, I'm in. Right. He never served or anything, just full on support for the veteran community. The one thing he said on that episode was like, just be a fucking human being.
Yeah.
Right. Just be a human being.
Yeah.
People get so caught up in their own stuff where it's like you forget how you're actually treating somebody, and you think that you're like improving somebody's life, but you end up like kind of pushing them in the wrong direction and freaking hating your guts.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
I understand that. I understand exactly what you mean by that.
Yeah. And I think that with the veteran community, a lot of people don't realize if you're not in the veteran community, veterans realize, right? There's so many different levels, and this doesn't get talked about a lot, right? Everybody talks about transition and help the veteran community and all this other stuff, and transition is a big part of it, but people don't talk about the dynamics within the veteran community, right? So, we're our worst enemy sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Right. The competition of who's the best veteran, right? And, this false competition that goes on. And it's like, dude, we're trying to like occupy the same space and better each other.
Mm-hmm.
We can't have a competition doing it. Right. You can't have a competition being like, I'm the best human being to help somebody else.
And then the next guy, I feel like he has to one up that guy.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And it's to me, I just stay clear of it because it kind of gets me jerked a little bit because when, you're trying to be a good person and, with Everlasting Veteran, like, I have a business model to follow and, unfortunately, and fortunately, I don't have like a team. I don't have, this huge group or anything like that helping me with stuff. Like, it's me, these hands, my knowledge as I'm learning along the way. And I do get like some help with like media and, PR type of stuff, but I'm paying for it because that's what you got to do in business, right? To get your name out there, visibility, stuff like that. And, having long talks with Rob, the warrior strategist, and, and that's like his niche. He's an Air Force veteran. And he's really dove into like that niche of like getting people's names known. Right. And my biggest gripe of all of it is I got the cold shoulder right off the rip. Like, hey, and I reached out to people I thought like were my friends.
Right.
And like you called me brother. That's the big issue. Like if I call you brother, like that means that if you call me in the middle of the night, I will drop anything that I'm doing and whatever you need.
Right.
Right. If you say brother to me and then give me the cold shoulder because you feel like it's a competition,
I get it.
Just we'll go our separate ways.
Yeah,
I'll just put it like that.
Yeah, I get it.
Because it's one of those things that in the veteran community, if we're working against each other, we have the same common goal. Right. Of bettering the community within the veteran community. Right. And with community, you need to spell unity. And you can't have community without unity. Right. And if you don't have unity, you can't spell community. So you can't say that we're a community of one, right? If we're not unified.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, you see it all the time. And that goes with what I was just saying too. Because you have these, especially when it comes to business, veteran businesses.
Right.
You see veteran businesses tearing each other down.
It's
like it's not a competition. Like one business is trying to do something, And then there could be another business who maybe is trying to do that as well as some other things,
Right.
but they're trying to break the other one down to make themselves better. And listen, I get it. It's a rat race. We're all in this to make money. Some people just value money over relationships. And I never understood that.
Yeah.
I wasn't raised that way. You know, I don't ever let money determine whether
You don't chase the dollar.
right. I never. I don't ever let money determine how I respect somebody. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like I respect you if you're that guy, if you're a person and you're that human being that I can, like you said, I can call my brother or
Right.
I can call my sister. That means more to me than I don't care about your economic status or your social status or
Right.
your race, your religion. That means zero nada to me.
Exactly.
My way is how you treat me and how you treat others around you determines whether or not I feel like you're somebody that I want to associate myself with. And unfortunately, sometimes you find out too late, or I don't say incorrectly judge somebody, but because I feel like, and as a veteran, I feel you might feel this way too. I feel like my time in the service gave me one super great skill that I love. It gave me the ability to judge people immediately, like learn
Yeah.
who these people like. You know, when you meet somebody, whether or not you're going to like that person,
It's that vibe.
you get a vibe.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly it. They're that your aura, right?
Yeah.
Someone gives off that aura of, you know, hey, you introduce somebody to me and I know right away whether I'm going to get along with that guy.
Yeah.
And I know I can judge a person. Okay, that guy. Listen, sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes I feel like I misjudge somebody.
Hmm.
Like I say, well, I kind of like this guy or I don't like this girl. She's giving me the weird kind of vibe. I don't like it. Most of the time I nail it. But there are some times when I misjudge it or I'm like, okay, cool. But I always leave that door open.
Yeah.
To where, because I don't like that's the other thing I hate is preconceived notions about somebody.
Right.
Like you're telling me, well, you should not like that guy because he's this, that, and the other. Right. But I don't know this guy, but you're telling me that this is how this guy is before I even had a chance to talk to him or set eyes on the guy or the girl, whoever it is. You can't, I don't like when people do that because it makes me a little uncomfortable about you as well. Like if you're saying that about that person.
Yeah.
Now, listen, I always appreciate a heads up. If someone really is a genuine douchebag,
Yeah.
and I'll know it right away when I meet that person. And I go back to you like, dude, you nailed it on that guy.
That's a good slogan for a t-shirt. You know, but it really comes down to, and I think that Jocko Willings put it, you know, very, very blunt and simple. All right. You know, people's intent has a smell.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Right. And when it smells like shit, you can smell it. And you call it how you see it.
Right.
Right. It's very simple. Like, you know, if your intent is poor, right, no matter what you're doing, right, if your intent is poor, it's all going to freaking go to crap.
Right.
Right. And that's the message of anybody that's trying to get into the space. Like, listen to me. Right. I don't chase a dollar and I don't ask for handouts.
Right.
Right. I work hard for everything that I have. And a lot of people don't understand that. Before I joined the military, when I came back from college for a couple of years, I did college for a couple of years and was like, this ain't for me.
Right.
You know, I have a lot of family members, military. My stepdad, he was Marines, Army, Army Special Forces. My dad was Army. My grandfather was Navy. You know, so my calling was there, you know, and then the calling inside to like do something more than just me.
Right.
Right. That bigger calling to have a purpose to serve. And, you know, when I decided to leave college, you know, and my mom was like, yeah, you can't come home.
Mm.
Right. And, you know, our relationship is good now, everybody. So just chill out. But, you know, it was one of those things where, you know, it was in that time of college, push college. You have to have college to be successful in anything that you do. Right. I was homeless. I was living out of my truck, working 2 jobs for a short period of time. You know, it was one of those things, bounce around the couch, you know, once in a while when I could, you know, and went on for a long enough period of time for me to go, yeah, this ain't working out.
Right.
Right. And it was that kick in the ass, like very early on in life, because I was that college kid that was then trying to figure it out on my own. And, I said, listen, that inner calling, military, everything else. I walked in the recruiter's office. Of course, you got the Marine Corps guys. They're busy eating crayons. You walk past them, you go to the Army office. This is back when Olympic Pizza was where CVS was in Norwich.
Yeah.
Right. So we're talking a little.
That's a long time ago. That was a great spot too.
It was a great spot. So, and they were like second floor or whatever.
Yeah.
So, and then I hit the ground running.
Mhm.
I didn't look back. Go to MEPS, go to Springfield, Mass. And, I said to myself, I'm never coming back to Connecticut.
Right.
Because it was some of my best, worst memories at times. And, I felt like if I had to grow on my own, I needed to like turn my back on where I came from for a little bit. You know what I mean? To learn who I am.
Right.
You know what I mean? And, I went a little bit later on, into the military, not, 18 right out the door. So, 20, going to be 21, I end up in Germany, with 2nd Cavalry Regiment. And going from, bouncing couch to couch, I was living with my grandparents for a little bit when they were alive, which was like 2 doors down from my parents, which was still, it was weird because like, my grandparents are like, God rest their soul, like they were just like the calmest, like sensible people.
Right.
Like my grandfather, 23 years Navy. We thought he was on submarines, the entire time. Come to find out, he was part of joint, special forces tasks, and before it was the Navy SEALs.
Yeah.
Behind enemy lines in
UDTs,
Vietnam,
the
all
UDT
that
guys.
stuff.
Yeah, those guys are awesome.
So it all made sense like down the road, then realizing why, like when I was born, like I only knew him as a sober person, growing up, my mom knew him as a drunk. That's how they handled their problems.
Right.
And, I knew him as a different person in a different light. And I think, when I signed the dotted line and say, hey, I'm going in the military, and, my mom just kind of, and I'm going into the Army, and what's your job? Artillery. Okay.
Yeah.
You get that, never welcome back vibe,
Yeah.
because she's now lost control to protect me.
Well,
You know what I mean?
Listen, that's a mom's job. Right?
And that's what it comes down to, and you don't realize till you get older that,
Right.
there's, my mom was, very hardworking, still is hardworking. She came out of retirement because she was bored, and decided to go back in the legal field, because she was bored, but she was very, I wouldn't say helicopter, but controlling a lot, but a lot of it had to do with the fact that she was a single mother most of the time raising 3
Right.
kids. Right. And she was doing the best that she could, and you don't realize until later on in life
When you become a parent.
when you become the parent,
That's when you wake up to it. You're like, oh wow.
right. And I had so many moments. So I have 2 older step boys. One is 21, one is 18, and Heather and I have Emerson, the daughter, from both of us. And my stepdad Russ, badass dude. He's Canadian native. Went into the Marine Corps. Marine Corps wasn't good enough, so he decided to go Army Special Forces. And he is one of those dudes that was rough around the edges.
Yeah.
In the late 80s, 90s, growing up. Because my parents divorced when I was younger, and as well as I do, and anybody else that's a veteran that has a lot of family members that are veterans, it's a different family dynamic.
Yes, sir. It is absolutely.
It is one of those functional dysfunctional.
Yeah, I get that immediately.
And it's like no matter what, you love each other.
Absolutely.
But it's so dysfunctional sometimes.
But like other people from the outside, they see it, they're like, wow, okay, that's a lot.
But it's my
you
dysfunctional.
get it. Great, but you get it, right? Because you said it's your dysfunction.
Yeah.
So you know your family, you know who they are, and you know how they are.
Yeah.
So what may be weird to somebody else is perfectly normal for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that completely.
And it was one of those things too, is, I went into the Army, and, obviously, like, relatives in my family that served, were like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it was probably one of the proudest moments for my grandfather. And, I don't know the circumstances. I was in Germany when he passed. I was like a week away from deploying. I couldn't come home.
Right.
Same thing with my grandmother. I was on deployment. I was about to go on 2-week R&R. And I was able to talk to her on the phone. She passed away before I came home, and, it was one of those times in my life where I went, I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Right. The people that aligned me to push me to, where they thought I needed to go, I took kind of a sidestep, different direction, but then they realized that I needed that.
Right.
I needed that to push myself, which a lot of other, veterans that have gone in the service, that's why they've joined, because they're sick of, you want to be your own boss, but you're not really your own boss in the
Right.
military at all. But you have freedom, somewhat.
Right. Yeah.
A
little bit.
freedom from what's holding you back.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it was just one of those things. It was nice seeing the pride, within the family of another service member.
Yep.
Cut from a similar mold, having that same American pride, serving the country. Because I'll tell you the truth, like when 9/11 happened, I mean, I wanted to go then.
Yeah. I was 13 years into my career when that happened.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I get that completely. Like, that is one thing. My mom and dad have always supportive of, they supported when I said, hey, I'm joining the military. Boom, right away, supportive. My whole career, there was times when I wasn't sure if I was doing the right thing. Right. Because, you said something too, like, you knew there's that moment that you find in yourself that you're like, okay, I did the right thing.
Right.
Like, I'm doing the right thing. I'm like, I always knew that I was, but I questioned it because I was still a kid. And, I went through it with my son a few months ago. He's in college, and he was going through the same thing. Did I do the right thing? He's going to college. He's far away. He's in Ohio, and he's there with all new people. He's away from his family. He's away from his girlfriend, away from his friends. But he's making new friends.
Yep.
We're not going anywhere. His girlfriend's not going anywhere. But he has to figure it out on his own. I told him, listen, nothing I can tell you that's going to make you feel better. You just have to figure it out on your own. Yesterday he said to me, it's funny we had this conversation, because yesterday he said to me, today was the best day I've had since I've been in college. And he gets it. Like, he knows that this is where he's supposed to be, and this is what he was meant to do. And just like you found your moment and I found my moment.
It's that dopamine dump.
It is. Okay, this is what I was meant to do. Like, mine was on my first deployment. I guess it was 8-9 months into my first enlistment. Well, boot camp, sub school, submarine.
Yep.
And we're on deployment, and I'm barely 18, Ryan. And I'm seeing on this submarine, I'm packed inside this little tiny tube with all these dudes. And we're in places that I don't know. I still don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it, and I'm seeing this, and I'm like, this is what I was meant to do. I want to do this the rest of my life. Like, I immediately, the first time we went on station and the first time that I experienced Cold War things, I will say that the first time I experienced Cold War things was my moment where I was like, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. I made the right decision. And when the first opportunity I had to call home, I was so excited, but knowing that I couldn't tell my parents what I was doing. We pulled into Scotland, and I immediately called my parents, and I'm like, this is the greatest thing I've ever done in my life. And I will probably never do anything greater than this.
Yeah.
Now, then along came my kids, and, they're the greatest thing I've ever did in my life. But, I had that moment, and it's always great here when you talk to other veterans, because some guys never find that moment. Right. And you know those guys, and listen, you always have that guy who did his one enlistment. He bitched and moaned the entire time he was in, but he's the guy wearing grunt style. He's the guy, rocking the t-shirts, the what they call vet bro. He's a vet bro, right? He's got all the rubber bracelets, and
Right.
he's a vet bro. But he did 2 years in the Army, and he bitched about it the entire time. Hated every second of it. Couldn't wait to get out. But he's the first guy in line at Chili's on Veterans Day to get his bloomin' onion or wherever the hell they give you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? You know the guy I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But those are the guys that never found their moment.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there are some guys that hang on a long time and they go through a lot. They never find their moment and they feel like there's no other way out and they end up taking their own lives. And that, to me, that breaks my heart more than anything else in the whole entire world.
Yeah.
Is that, and we do as a nation, as a country, we do a awful, terrible, awful job of taking care of our men and women when they come home, because Metallica made a song about it back in the 80s called Disposable Heroes, right? Because you can become a shell of the person you were when you come home from war, but there's going to be someone else going to step right up and take your spot, and then they just toss you to the side and they don't take care of you.
Right.
And I don't want to be political because I respect you and your show, but the things that we're doing in our country now for other people and we're not doing for our veterans is completely disrespectful to me, and it makes me sick, and it should make I think every single person in this country should be sick over what's going on right now.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with you. And I mean, I appreciate you, with the respect to the show, but I mean, I don't try to push a political side on the show, but I do say America first.
Absolutely, first and always.
I mean, if you live in the country and you want to, have the freedoms and everything that America has, and you serve your country in a capacity in which you're allowed to, continue giving the people of the the country, the American dream, and, I'm all for, like, if people want to come here and have that American dream and work hard and, but this illegal, like, kind of immigration, bus loads, New York is a shit
I won't
show
go to
right
New
now.
York. I won't go to New York. I won't go to, listen, I want to pack my Jeep right now and go to Texas.
Yeah.
I want to go to Texas and I want to help defend our borders.
Yeah.
Because what's going on right now in the world, and this, unfortunately, our state is not one of those states that's supporting Texas right now, because I would not be shocked if the word secession comes up.
Yeah.
Because Texas has had enough.
Yeah.
And what's it going to take for the rest of the country to wake up and say, look, we're literally being invaded right now. Literally.
Yeah. Well, they don't talk about on the news, like, how many known people on the terrorist watch list
how many military age men are crossing the border,
trying to come through Mexico because of, how lax, the administration right now has allowed it to be. It is a dangerous thing when you don't protect, what is established, right? And there's one thing of, like, monitoring it. There's another thing of actually protecting it.
Right.
And, if people want to come here, you have to go through the process.
Right.
We have to know who's here.
And I am not blind to the fact that this is a humanitarian crisis as well. I get this. I 100% get this. And I know that something has to be done, but this letting people come in, I mean, flood across our borders is not the answer.
Yeah.
I get it's a humanitarian thing. I understand it completely. There are children.
I think there's a better way to handle refugees. There has to still be a vetted process, as long as they're in a safe environment, where they are trying to flee their country based on war or civil war, whatever the case may be. There is a better way to handle it.
Right.
The vetting,
amnesty. Yes. They're looking for amnesty, but
the vetting system still needs to take place.
Yes, I agree.
And, it's one of those topics that it's like suicide or any other tough topic where people don't want to talk about it because it makes them uncomfortable, right? It makes them uncomfortable to talk about because they're like, wow, we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, or I don't want to have a poor image of, myself to, the public if I even say the word,
Right.
or talk about it, because it's one of those things where if you don't talk about it, no solutions are going to be
Right.
found.
People will just, well, see, that's part of the reason we're in where we are today is because people are too afraid to hurt someone's feelings because they're afraid of getting canceled or whatever. We've become way too dependent on emotions, right? And this is why we're in the situation we're in, because when we vote, and I don't care who you vote for. If you side with one side, that's what makes America great. Right. We have a choice, but vote with facts instead of feelings. That was my whole issue with the last election. Listen, my guy lost. Okay, cool. Moving on. I'm moving on.
Yeah.
Right. Did I agree with everything? Absolutely not. But dwelling on it, it's not changing anything.
Can we agree though, like, of the millions of people in America, like, those are like, can we get somebody younger?
Please.
Of the millions of Americans, I just want to throw that out there because, we have one that was going into dementia, the other one that couldn't keep his mouth shut, and it hurt him politically and everything, Can we find somebody in the middle ground a little bit?
What did South Park said? Giant douche versus a turd sandwich. That's what we're talking about right now. That's what we're talking about, and that's where we're repeating the same thing this year,
right?
Because we can't get someone younger. And listen, not only can we get somebody younger, can we get somebody younger and competent,
right?
Because I like what President Trump did. A lot of the things that he does and says, I do not agree with. But there's a lot of things that he does and says.
He is for the country.
I believe that he is. And that's why he had my vote, because I believe that his beliefs and the way he wants America to be align with my belief. Well, a lot of my beliefs. There are a lot of things that I don't agree with him. If we all agreed on the same thing all the time, life would be super boring.
Right.
But it doesn't need to be hateful. It doesn't need, if someone is like, if
you can still be a human being and have a conversation.
Right. And that's why we've gone way off the reservation here in our country because politically we don't agree, then that makes you a bad person. That drives me nuts.
Yeah.
My decision about you is not based on, again, I said it earlier in the show. I don't care what God you worship. I don't care about what color of your skin or what part of the world you're from. I don't care about any of that. I don't care about who you vote for. Because that's your business. This is America, and you are free to do as you please. Supposedly.
Yeah.
But that's not how we're going anymore, because I really hate, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist or any of that, those weird people that go on the radio and they talk about crazy things that they think are going to happen.
How many people bought a shovel to dig a mole hole? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, it was a real thing at one point in time, where people, have forgot, that nuclear war was, and it's prevalent right now.
It is again.
And what people are doing right now is the same thing that happened then.
Yes.
History repeats itself if you don't teach it in school.
Dude. What did they say? I forget the phrase is. Those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it.
Right.
Because that's why, as horrible as some of the things that in our past were, as horrible as all those things were, you can't erase it.
Yeah.
Just by tearing down a statue or erasing it from a history book. It doesn't change it.
Right.
But you need to teach it so it doesn't happen again.
Right.
Listen,
it's not, and it's one of those things. We're not not condoning it.
Of course not.
And that's, I think, what we saw the pandemic, right? Everybody got put in a freaking shaker.
Yeah.
And then thrown out.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
And you have people that, were once sane that now aren't, and you have people that, were, once not sane and they're even like
way off now.
There wasn't like,
I get it.
There wasn't the other correction, like where they were insane and then they became normal, which would have been awesome.
Right. But just think about this for a second. Think about leading up to from 2016, from that election up into up to the pandemic, there was nothing but division in our country. There was, and listen, I fully blame the media for all of this, social media especially.
Yeah.
There was nothing but division. It was white versus black. It was left versus right. It was Trump versus Obama. It was this versus that. It's always Coke versus Pepsi. It was something.
Yeah.
Something that we had to be divided about. And then the pandemic came. And then we kind of came together for a little while. And then the vaccine came out. And it started all over again. Because listen, again, I don't care. You don't want a vaccine? Good for you. I don't care.
Yeah.
Whether I get the vaccine or not is actually nobody's business, in my opinion.
Well, it's actually a law. Well, I mean, it's a HIPAA law.
Right. But I mean, who the hell cares? But if you don't want to get that vaccine, that's your decision. That is you as an American.
Well, there was people getting fired.
I had to get one because I would have got fired from my job.
Yeah.
And I can't afford to lose my job.
Yeah. And there was people getting fired. And then after everything was all done,
they're like,
percentage met, like,
yeah, I was angry about that.
Like it was one of those things. It's like, and I mean, I have, without going into a bunch of detail, I know a bunch of people that work at Pfizer, my wife included. But, I was even under the, impression at first, and, I like to do my research.
Right.
For years after the military, I didn't get my flu shot.
I haven't got one since I was in the military. It's been almost 13 years since I got one.
So same here. And it was one of those things. I got my first flu shot like 2 weeks ago at the VA. I'm like, whatever, because what else are you going to stick with? I pretty much am in a walking immune,
Remember the anthrax vaccine?
Oh, that.
We didn't die from that. Just,
yeah.
Everybody said, oh my God,
I got the scar. I got the scar. If you get a scar on your arm because you need to get a shot, there's something wrong, right? And the peanut butter shot.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Right. The penicillin.
Yeah. The cold.
That's the worst. Worst. He's like, oh, let me see your cheek. Can you imagine having that job though?
No.
Right.
But that was back when they had those air guns.
No, mine was a needle, and you could feel it slowly going in.
In the 80s, I remember like your P2 day, your second day of boot camp. You're in there, and you're going through medical, and you're getting all your shots.
Yep.
And you're walking through. You have your shirt off, you're just in your t-shirt, and your both sleeves rolled up, and you're running the gauntlet. And there's probably some people out there that are watching or listening that remember this. You run the gauntlet. It was just two sides, and there was a corpsman on both sides, and they had these air guns.
Yep.
They were hooked up to compressed air, and they had it was like something out of a science fiction movie, the little vial of the
virus.
Well, the vaccine was screwed to it, and then you just walk up, they wipe you with a alcohol swab, and then and you get like, it's a bee sting. Yeah. And you look down on your arm, and you got like a little bee sting on your arm, and then you go to the next one, and then and you go through like 8 of them. Yeah. And then you got like a whole swarm of bee stings on your both arms.
Well, and then
who the hell knows what they were putting in us then?
Well, and then you go on a deployment, and and it's like, all right, you need
here's the TB,
here's the 27 shots that you need. We'll just give you this one just in case.
Did you ever get the malaria one?
Yeah.
Oh,
and then
the pills.
I had to take the malaria pills.
Oh, dude. Talk about night terrors and the worst dreams I've ever had in my life. Dude.
I had that state where you're just about to fall asleep, but you're not quite there.
Yeah.
I had fluorescent colored large spiders going up and over, right? And and
who knows what they gave us.
Yeah. It was a test for like LSD or something to see if it was, helped.
Right. That's what I said, man. Listen, no matter what they put in this vaccine, I survived 24 years on a submarine.
Yeah.
And the military put all kinds of stuff in me.
Yeah.
And I made it.
Yeah, my body's going to reject it anyways.
I mean, I did have COVID. I've had it once. Yeah. It was awful. It was the worst, most sick I've ever been.
It's just
like everyone's going to get it. It's like the flu.
Yeah, exactly. It's just
the
like
new flu.
Yeah. Well, the thing is a lot of people don't realize is when they give the flu shots, right? The flu shot, they're trying to guess the strand that's out.
Yeah.
Right. They don't
get it right.
They don't get it right every time. They may pick a strand that's less weak, than what's out there. But, it's one of those things where, I'm a firm believer, like we talked about, like religion and shots. There's some friends that I have that aren't, they're 100% no shots. They're 100%
personal choice.
Personal choice. It is what it is.
Yes.
You're right. I mean, we're not in an era where like we have a smallpox outbreak. Right?
Modern medicine is amazing.
Modern medicine is amazing. Like you can survive and have a great life with no shots, probably. Like, you know,
I mean,
like,
you're taking it's just a risk you're knowingly taking, but hey, whatever.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're gonna take somewhat of a risk, but it's not a risk like how like it was what was it, in the 20s?
Yeah. Well, back
20s, 30s,
even in the
stuff like-
1800s too.
Yeah,
like
18. Well, I mean,
even going
even
polio.
I'm talking like even still more recent times, the last 100 years, right? I mean, you know, disease has been around and ever evolves, and you know, people thought that like the pandemic, this virus, it was like people were going around with an airsoft can through communities spraying a virus.
There was some crazy things, man. This country was an absolute shit show
Disaster
for that whole entire time. And listen, there's conspiracy theories out there, and it's just you could go on for days.
It was
listening to it, and listen. We made it through. You know,
we should have had a party as a country.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
But you know what? We didn't. We didn't have a part. We didn't say, yeah, we're alive.
Right.
You know, we all said, I hate you. I want to fight you
because you know you don't believe the same things as me. But you know what? Me and my friends, we continued on like it was not even a thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I will tell you right now, me and my circle of boys, we had the best parties, probably the best parties we've had as a group of friends during COVID, during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Like the beginning of it, when everyone was kind of scared, we did Zoom call. We had Zoom happy hours. We drank together on the thing.
Yeah.
But then like a first opportunity we had, we were like, let's do it.
Super spreader.
But there was a couple of our friends and their wives were like, kind of like nervous and a little, but I didn't give a shit, whatever.
And so let's dive in. So the super spreader, right? You know, people were so quick to be like
6 people at Thanksgiving for 2 hours.
You know, it was you. And we can track exactly where it comes from because it has an IP address.
Remember there was like in California, like I didn't get me going on that, but they had like you weren't allowed to sing. You weren't allowed to sing happy birthday. Like what is happening?
You can't blow out your candles. You know,
what are we doing?
I know.
Like, this is insane.
I said the same thing. I said to my wife, I said, we're not going to blow out candles in the same house at least.
Shit, I live my life. You know what? When it's my time, it's my time.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to change my course.
Yeah.
My thread is already, my life story is written. I just haven't seen it all. And whatever happens.
Yeah.
And I wasn't trying to put anyone else in danger. Like I wasn't that guy walking around, take off your mask. You know what I mean? Like, hey, you're comfortable wearing a mask, wear your mask. Don't make me wear it because I don't want to wear this stupid thing. But like, you go into a business because I'm very big on small business.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends own their own businesses, and that was the law. Whether I agree with it or not, it didn't matter. But I still wanted to support my friends' businesses. So I had to go in and wear the stupid mask, right? And we used to walk around, make jokes, mask it or casket. You know what I mean? Like we would make jokes wherever we went.
Well, the funniest part,
people get offended.
The whole mask thing, like there was like companies like, you know, one, they did studies that like, you know, I mean, you should not be wearing a mask that often, right?
You would make yourself sicker.
It affects your breathing significantly,
absolutely.
Right? But then on top of it, you had people like freaking, they had like a fishbowl. They would just, whatever covered your face was acceptable. As long as your face was covered, you're good.
I didn't understand any of that.
Right?
The science did not make sense there. It was
the best though was the family of dinosaurs that went grocery shopping.
Oh, inside the T-Rex costumes.
Yes. I saw that video come out and I'm like, good for them.
Yeah.
Good for them. You feel like you feel like you're on like you're in this world.
It was crazy, man.
And it was
a weird time, you know. And I feel the worst for is the kids because my kids went through it.
Yeah.
You know, my daughter was, and you have a daughter. My daughter was, what was this, 2020? So she was like 11. Well,
yeah, my daughter was 3.
My daughter was 12.
Yeah, and she was 3 at the time. So like, you know, when you had young kids, obviously like, you know, any serious illnesses, you know, you want to protect them. Right. So like there was that aspect. And then you had people that, you know, obviously if you if you have, don't get me wrong, like you have to take things seriously if you have autoimmune or you have
Right, of course.
older relatives, you know, all joking aside from the pandemic, like, you know, you have to take those precautions, but you took it before the pandemic. You should be taking it during the pandemic.
Right.
Right. Nothing really changed.
Right.
Right. For you. Right. Our lives changed where if we don't know, you can't blame us if you don't tell us.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get it.
Like, that's my health history. You don't need to. It's like, no, I'm doing it out of a courtesy,
Right.
because I'm a good human being, and now you're being an asshole to me.
Yeah.
You know, or the people. I love how. Can I see the hat real quick?
Yeah.
The people that go through the grocery store, right? The mask is like this.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And they're like, "Hey, excuse me,
Put your mask up, please.
can I put your mask up?" And they go like this.
Yeah.
Right.
That was me. Yeah. It's on. I'm wearing it.
Yeah. Yeah. But there's still people that have masks on now. 2024,
I saw a lady in the Walmart last night, wherever the store with my daughter. Oh, in Target yesterday, and the lady was like fully.
But they walk
masked
around.
up.
They walk around like this. It's on their
This
chin.
lady was like, the mask was up to her eyes. I mean, listen, that mental health. I think mental health suffered more than people's actual health. Like mental health was the biggest, especially in our young kids, because it affected them very socially. Like we tried to keep our kids engaged with a lot of things. We did a lot of things as a family. We did a lot of things together because we wanted to keep our kids engaged. You know, there was my kids. I felt like especially my daughter, I felt like she kind of went into a little bit of a depression. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like she was doing things she wouldn't normally. Like she would just lock herself in her room. Like I know teenagers do stuff like that, but like it was just, I don't know, like reading whole books in a day. Like, I mean, come out of your room for a little while.
Yeah.
You know, my son loved it because he gets to play video games all day long and no one's going to yell at him.
Right.
Right. Virtual, didn't have to get up and go to school. They had virtual school.
Yeah.
But I still think that suffered developmentally. A lot of kids suffered because a lot of kids, listen, there's millions of kids in this country that don't have the kind of home life that my kids have. You know what I mean? Like their parents aren't as involved and still to this day. I ask my son every single day, call him at college. Hey, how was your day? On the way here, I called him. Hey, how was your day before he goes to practice?
Right.
Did you have a good day? Yeah. Hey, we'll talk to you later on. Hey, how was practice tonight? Every single day. My daughter comes home from school. How's school today? There's parents out there that don't do that because they don't care. And those kids are the ones that suffer the most.
Right.
Because they had nothing.
Well, and I think too that there are some kids that excelled as well.
Yeah.
Right. You
Of
know,
course.
so it was one of those weird times where like you had some of the kids that, you know, said, you know, going to school isn't for me. But then they were like in the comfort of the home. And some of these kids like blew it out of the water.
Exactly.
But then the schools got lazy and they're like, oh, no more tests. And then it's like,
they took advantage of that.
oh, man. Even when they went back to school,
Yep.
right, they were like, no more tests. I'm like, no more tests?
Yeah.
I'm like, how are you going to know if you actually learned something?
Right.
You know what I mean?
But, listen, I get it. And of all the bad things about the whole pandemic, there was a lot of great things that came of it, right?
Right.
Like I get to telework. I get to telework 2 days a week. I only go to the office 3 days a week. I didn't go to work for 15 months. I spent without going to the office. It was kind of nice. I got the same amount of work done.
Yeah.
But it was kind of nice, like rolling out of bed and throwing a hoodie on and sitting at my desk. You know what I mean? It wasn't didn't have to get all dressed up and go to work. But there was a lot of great things. I think it gave us more time to sit and focus on what was important. I'm big on family, so spending a lot of time with my family was actually one of the good things that came of COVID.
Yeah.
You know, I know it hurt a lot of small businesses, but I think it helped a lot of small businesses too. Like people appreciated them more.
Well,
because remember when they shut down small businesses,
Yeah.
but you could still go to Home Depot. Right? Remember, like you can still go to Target and Walmart, but you can't go to the mom and pop grocery store. None of that stuff made sense, and that made me want to help them more. And you know, and we talked about like my first podcast. That was the point of my first podcast. Was I have a lot of friends in the beer industry. I work at a brewery. all these people are my friends before the pandemic that I used to frequent all the breweries, local breweries.
Mhm.
And then when they put these stupid rules into effect after when they started relaxing the pandemic lockdown, you could go to the brewery, but you had to be eating in order to drink beer, which
Yeah.
made zero sense.
Well, the virus doesn't.
Well,
The
that was
virus takes a break.
You'd say that, yeah, you can't. Oh, I have a hot dog in my
Yeah.
hand. The virus is not. I'm not going to get COVID.
Yeah.
I'm holding a hot dog in my hand, right? But my point was, people were afraid to go out. People didn't want to be inconvenienced, and these places were suffering. These were people's livelihoods. Like,
Right.
they put some people that I know that have these breweries, they put every single dime that they had building their business, which was thriving before 2020. And then all of a sudden, the government pulled the rug out from underneath them and said, sorry,
All right.
and didn't help them whatsoever.
Right.
But yet, Budweiser was still making beer. Coors was still making beer. But these small places that rely so much on their local customers,
Yeah.
sorry, guys. And that was why I started doing what I did, because I wanted to bring the attention to these places that people forgot about.
Right.
Like you go to, I work at Epicure Brewing in Norwich. That was one of my first people to come on the show. Willimantic Brewing, Tox Brewing, Fox Farm, all these great places, Outer Light. These guys, all these local breweries that were kind of just lost in the shuffle, where they were struggling. And I said, listen, I would go to there and I would have them on the show. We would sit in the brewery and we'd talk about it and show people what was here. Come see these people. And that was what I wanted to do, because I felt like we owed them, after them. I say we, as a country, we owed these small businesses back for the way they were treated during the stupid pandemic. And I'm not insensitive. A lot of people lost loved ones during the pandemic because COVID was a real thing.
It
wasn't an amazing thing. It was a real thing. Yeah. And there was a lot of Americans that we lost. But I think we way overdid it.
I think if and at first a lot of people forget, Trump got ridiculed shutting down the country when he did.
Absolutely.
Right. How many more lives would we have lost if he didn't do it?
Right. Well, let's face it though, Ryan, that dude, if he wiped front to back, he'd be ridiculed. They'd try to indict him for wiping the wrong direction. But oh my God, Trump puts ketchup on steak, indictment. Like, that dude can do literally nothing right.
Yeah.
Trump found the cure to cancer. Yeah, but why didn't he do it sooner?
Yeah.
And so I'm over that.
Yeah.
I'm over that whole.
Yeah,
I'm tired of it.
I'm tired of it too, and I think a lot of us are. And it's one of those, and a lot of it is a media 100%. Agenda pushed,
as everything else is.
And so there's a really good book out there. I think it's called Follow the Money. Mm-hmm. And it talks about you find out more about what's actually going on when you follow the money.
Absolutely.
Right.
With everything.
Yeah. So, with these news networks, and whose pockets are fatter than who, and who's actually, pulling the strings, who's the puppet master of sorts, and when stuff started coming out, that's when people's eyes started opening up and being like, okay. Mm-hmm. But my biggest thing is, it's kind of like you go into any profession, why do you want this job? Right. That's one of the questions normally you're asked. Why do you want this job? I guarantee when they went to that news station or that journalist job, I want to, put out all the correct information so everybody's informed of what they, need.
Sorry, you can't work here.
Yeah. I'm sure that's the answer that, they probably gave. Right. And, what we saw was a just complete, hurricane destruction, of misinformation a lot of times.
Right. And
it deprived the American people of being able to make their own judgment.
Right.
Of what's actually going on.
That's the part of that. That drives all the, because there's nothing.
It was almost to the point of propaganda.
There's nothing that's good. Like, we don't watch the news in my house because of that. Yeah. We don't watch news in my house because nothing is good is happening.
Right.
There was one of the sayings I liked, and I don't even remember it, but if don't listen to what the media is telling you, go outside and talk to your neighbors. You find out that the world is a pretty great place. America is a great place.
Yeah.
America has been a great place. It has been a great place, and it will remain a good place to be if you just turn off the noise.
Right.
Get rid of the noise, because somebody is trying to sell you something every minute that you have that TV on, or every minute you're on social media. Someone is trying to sell you something, whether it's information or product. Someone's trying to sell you something biased to what their beliefs are.
Right.
And then I think the social media aspect of our society makes us weak-minded, soft and weak-minded, mush brains, and we fall for the same crap.
All right.
And that's why we're in a lot of the situations we're in right now, because, channel A, B, C, and D are telling you this person is a bad person because he said mean things, and this guy is great because he thinks this or this. And you know what? At the end of the day, they're all just trying to buy your vote.
Right.
All of them.
And and we'll shift a little bit off the back and forth, because a lot of people, they're still hung up on it.
Yep.
Right. They can't get away from it. And I actually, when I did an episode with Dr. Lynette Nussbacher, who was a host of Discovery Channel's Mysteries of the Abandoned, we dove into it a little bit. Because she talked about the political ties over in the UK and everything.
Right.
And newspapers, it happens around the world right now.
Absolutely.
It's not just the United States. So, getting perspective, and that's why I love having people on from all over the place, getting perspective, because she put it, plain and simple. Like, if you go and get a very liberal paper, you need to go get a very conservative paper, and be able to bounce the two back and forth and see what's going on.
Somewhere in the middle is the actual what's really happening.
Yeah, and she's she's run for office several times in the UK and everything like that, and she holds very, very prestigious positions.
Right.
And she's well thought after as far as jobs go and her line of work and everything with military strategic planning and everything else and logistics. She has a wealth of knowledge, but the papers say something else sometimes.
Right.
Right. They could be like, Joe Schmo is, doing XYZ, when they weren't even over there.
Right.
And it depends on, what's going to get papers to sell more.
Exactly. Or push their agenda.
Versus
actually who's paying for it.
Right. Versus actually telling the truth. They're competing. I look at it this way. It's in comparison. All right. People are tuning in to Taylor Swift being at the Chiefs game because they're Swifties.
Right.
Right. That is the hot topic because Taylor Swift's at the games. The NFL has been making bank. Right.
Like $340 million.
Right.
Extra this year.
She made like $1 billion on her Era tour. Yeah, good for her.
Absolutely.
And I think she is an amazing artist.
She's the most popular person on the entire planet.
Right. It doesn't matter what country she went to.
Right.
And rightfully so, she put in the work. Right. But the perspective is, so my daughter sat through an entire game watching.
Dude, we're right here on that. My daughter's saying.
Right. And it was an awesome moment.
Yes.
Right. Because she's asking questions about the game. She's trying to learn now football, shifted off of the fact that Taylor Swift is there. And I'm now having a conversation where she would never have been interested probably of watching that game. Right. But, it's the same aspect. Right. You have, the right over here or the left over here going, hey, look at this, right? But look at this.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that like kind of magic trick, smoke and mirrors type of thing. And you almost wonder, is the NFL up to it or is it a true thing?
Oh.
And I think they're in love.
I think
they love each other.
Yeah, good for them. Why? I don't understand why, but everything.
But you got these people that go, the NFL is up to this, whatever the case may be. You have the
CIA plant.
You have the celebrity, people of status meetings. It's almost like those cultures that would like establish marriages.
Right, dude. Here's my take. Travis Kelce thought Taylor Swift was hot. He shot his shot.
Yeah.
Right. He tried to meet her. She got word of it from somebody who knew him and also knew her, and she's like, "Sure, I'll talk to him." Because apparently this has been going on way longer than. Yes, my daughter, she knows. She's been going on way longer than
Really?
everyone knew, like since the summer.
Wow.
And when she came to Kansas City, he tried to get with her, at least give her his number. And I guess she like was like, kind of dismissed him. But then she ended up calling him or whatever. And it's just like you and me meeting a girl in a bar. Like, hey, I know somebody that knows her, so I'm going to go through her to get to you.
Right.
That's how I interpreted the whole thing, and it's cool. Like, is it a little much? Probably, but like I'm in the same situation as you. My daughter and I have watched 2 football games in their entirety twice in my entire life, and those were the last 2 games that the Chiefs played in.
Yeah,
my daughter does not care about the NFL. Now she's wearing a Travis Kelce jersey. She loves it, and I don't care if it makes her happy. So what? Do I think Taylor Swift is some CIA operative that is going to push the Biden agenda at halftime of the Super Bowl? No, I do not. I think that is one of the crazier
like
theories.
Mr. and Mrs. Smith in the movie,
and the Sasquatch and the Loch Ness Monster are going to be on the field with her as well, with the UFOs.
Yeah, halftime show.
It's crazy. People just come up with the craziest things. But hey, listen, if it makes you happy believing in those things, go for it.
Yeah,
it's America. Say what you want.
Yeah,
freedom of speech.
Yep. Well, to a certain extent.
Well, yes.
Till they cancel you.
Well, yeah. Well, I've been saying this since the Kaepernick deal. Freedom of speech is wonderful, but it doesn't absolve you of freedom of consequences.
Right. Exactly.
Every action has a reaction. I tell my kids the same thing. Say what you want. You're free to say whatever you want, but your words have consequences.
Yeah. Well, and it's, I mean, words are words, but when you take the Kaepernick incident, right? And he was a young guy trying to, use his status to make a statement.
Yep.
Right. A bold statement.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of guts to do that.
Yep.
The way it was done, I think a lot of us can agree, wasn't the best way.
Right. I didn't like it, but I also respected his right to do so.
I respected it. For me, I don't think you should kneel
ever
for the national anthem.
Ever.
For
and the whole
flag.
thing. Well, a veteran gave him that idea. I'm calling bullshit on that.
Yeah.
That was a made up lie.
Yeah. I think that, like you said, it is made up lie, because I don't know any veteran will say kneel during the national anthem.
Now, whoever that veteran is probably one of those vet bros that I was talking about earlier. Wearing his grunt style t-shirt and just coming off the cuff, say, "Oh yeah, buddy, go ahead and kneel." That was a great idea. How'd that work out?
Yeah.
Listen, again, I respected his right to do so, and I know what he was trying to do, and it's America. But again, freedom of speech does not absolve you of freedom of consequences, and he found out the hard way. It's like all these people that the riots and all this other stuff. You're free to say and do whatever you please, but when you have to deal with the consequences, no matter what that is. Those things that's going to come back to bite you.
I just like absorbed so much air into my lungs. I don't know what just happened. I almost went out. That was intense.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good thing I'm right here.
Yeah, I had to mute my mic. I mean, people heard the cough, but I was like, "What is going on?"
Yeah.
Like it was like I felt like a June bug just went into my throat.
Good Lord.
I'm just allergic to bullshit, I think.
Yeah.
We'll move on from this, because I honestly think that we do need to talk about it here and there so that it doesn't repeat itself. We talked about if you erase history or repeat itself, so I think that talking about it allows us to learn from it as well.
Absolutely.
And it is still relevant. It's not like I slapped you in the face and I said, "I'm sorry," and then we just moved on.
Right.
It's one of those things where if you were pissed about it, right, and we didn't have the conversation, why I was pissed and slapped you in the face, if we didn't have that conversation, right, You wouldn't know where I was coming from. I wouldn't know where you were coming from.
Dude, you
And
nailed
if we
it.
just tried to move on and just erase what happened,
Right.
it would probably happen again.
It's going to happen.
Or
again.
you would do it.
Just
you know?
like, dude, I'll use it as an example. The whole racism thing. Right. I've never like if you don't have the conversations, then you don't learn.
Right.
You just said it. If you don't have the conversation to why I can understand why you feel the way you feel, then how am I going to learn about that? You know what I mean? Like I know how I feel about it and I know what I believe.
Yeah.
But if I'm not taking it from someone else's perspective, then I'll never fully understand it.
Right.
Right. And that's where we as a society are failing because everyone's on one side of the fence or they're on the other side of the fence.
Yeah.
You're either you're racist or you are starting trouble. And we just turn off the TV, turn off your phone, and listen to each other about a lot of things, not just that. I think that we'd be in a way better place than we actually are right now.
Yeah. And I think the biggest like kind of takeaway from it is, you can sum it down to like protected classes, right? When I look at it like this, like with religion, it's based on belief. Right. Whatever. And the only reason why I use it is because it's based on belief. Whatever you believe in is your belief. Right. I'm not going to, you can't judge somebody for that.
Right.
Right. I can sit here and say, I want to become, a Muslim or Jewish or, I was raised Roman Catholic, but my family is Native American, on my wife's side, and, they have that spiritual side, but, if you go into history, it was pushed upon them for which religion to believe in,
right.
which, Catholicism was adapted into pretty much everything because that was kind of the European kind of way, so if you don't teach these teachings, kind of like if you don't teach, for instance, like Native American teachings of language, culture, stuff like that, everybody comes from a different background, right? And if you don't express like what your background is, what your culture is, people aren't going to understand it.
Correct.
The biggest, the other thing is, the biggest thing is I took this world music class at Three Rivers, probably one of the best classes ever. And it was now more of how music affected culture. Right. And that was kind of like its main objective, how music affected culture, like throughout decades and generations and everything else. How, even in villages, how they would, take time to make the instruments and, certain people were, responsible for making certain instrument, all this kind of other stuff. Found it very, very interesting, and then you look at like, our country right now and everybody is so diverse, but nobody wants to listen to each other.
Right. Music is one of the things that we have in this world that brings people together.
Yeah.
Right. Because it ain't sports because that's even worse than politics.
Yeah. Yeah.
But music is one of the things that I think everybody likes music. And I can honestly tell you, I don't know one person in my life that I've met that says, I hate music.
Yeah. Well,
that's
Taylor Swift is the prime example. She is adored by millions, if not billions, around the world. Right? And it's a testament to how music connects people.
Yep.
If you allow yourself to open up to somebody else to your left and your right, you may find out you have more in common.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there, they're ingrained into their mind because they're so ignorant. Right. Ignorance is the worst because they are not allowing themselves to grow.
Right.
Right. That's the whole thing of ignorance.
Well, that's what in 2024, if you're ignorant, you'll get left behind.
Oh yeah. Especially with like how technology is coming along and everything else, AI and everything. You'll say something like this podcast, probably at some point or another, there'll probably be like a AI bot that, takes this podcast and puts words into my mouth,
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah.
That's a thing. AI is a thing.
Yeah. So I do think that through a lot of this, there were veterans transitioning, 200 plus veterans transition out of the military every single year. Many get left behind.
Yes.
We talked about the pandemic. We talked about the effects of it having on small business. We talked about the effects of it on us, in our lives, but we weren't transitioning out of the military during probably one of the worst times in decades.
Imagine. I couldn't even imagine if I was transitioning
Right?
out.
You transition out and nobody's there to pick you up at the airport and they can't talk to you.
It's crazy.
Right? So, I mean, mental health aside for a country as a whole, I can't fathom what that transition was like in 2020.
Yeah.
2021.
I mean, I had a hard enough time with it in 2012. And that was a normal year.
And I got out of active duty, transition to National Guard in 2012. And, I mean, I had been overseas for 4 years, right? 4 years straight. I was either in Germany and then I deployed with them to Afghanistan. But those 4 years I was overseas the entire time. I wasn't stateside. And so I was really grasping the culture over there in Germany. Beautiful country, great beer.
Yeah.
Especially some of the food and everything. And you got the beer gardens and it's kind of like the breweries. Like every beer garden is privately owned, it's the only little family, so every beer is kind of a little bit different. You get the Dunkelweizen and it's like drinking a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
But my transition back from Germany back to stateside, there were times where I said, am I doing the right thing?
Right.
Because I mean, one, it is nearly impossible to line up a job still being contracted by the military. Right. So at the time, I went boots on ground in Connecticut and started the process to become a police officer. For 6.5 months, I was unemployed. Right. And I got out because I wanted to settle down. I didn't want to end up, saying, one, my wife now was not going to move at the time, the older boys who were younger around. So I said, I'm getting out. I get out, and it was a shit show.
Yeah.
What was your experience like?
So actually, I lucked out. I ended up transitioning out while I was on shore duty. So it was a little easier because I had time to finish my degree. I finished everything I needed to finish, went to all my separation classes and all that stuff that they make mandatory for the guys getting out, which was, listen, those things are great because a lot of the people that, came before us didn't have those things. So I think what they do to help us now transitioning out is great. So I went to all those things, and then I had the luxury of, again, being on shore duty and being able to help myself transition to get out. Now, this was in 2012.
Yep.
And I retired in June of 2012. And I was excited, obviously, to get out and be home with my kids, be home with my wife, start a new part of my life. Leaving the military, as much as I loved it, it was time to go. And I was very excited about it. But then probably 6 to 8 weeks after, I kind of fell into a little bit of a depression because it's hard. It's still hard to find a job. I had a couple of things lined up and it fell through, things I worked hard that I really wanted, it just didn't line up. And then when I finally got a job, I really kind of hated it. You know what I mean? But I stuck it out because that's what we do. And until something better came along, and it did. Thankfully, it did, because I'm not that one to just be like, oh well, You know what I mean? I wanted more for myself and for my
Right.
family. But I found myself probably 6 to 8 weeks after I retired, just in a little bit of a depression. And after being the military being part of my life every single day for 24 years, and then all of a sudden it's gone. That's a huge culture shock, man. That's
Right.
huge. It's a big thing. And I had some difficult times, and I couldn't. Hindsight, I wish I would have talked to my wife a little more about it, but I didn't want to burden anyone else with my issue. Like, I'll just work through it. That's what we do, right? We'll work through it. Like, the military taught us, hey, man, just work through it. And that's why a lot of our brothers and sisters get to the point where they can't work through it, because that's what they taught us for so long, is like, hey, the whole stigma of especially men's mental health, we didn't talk about it.
Right.
You know, you pushed it off because you had a job to do, you had a mission to do. So you worried about everyone else, you didn't worry about yourself. And then hindsight, I wish I would have talked to her more, and it would have made myself feel better about things. But I would legit, Ryan, I would find myself driving on base for no reason. Like, I had no idea what I was doing on base. I would just drive around base because that's what I did. That's what I did for so long. Imagine, I left Charleston, South Carolina, which was my first ship. I served on 2 ships there, and I left there in 91 and came here. So I was on sub base from 1991 until 2012. That's where I lived. And then all of a sudden, I don't live there anymore.
Right.
And it's a little bit, not that they didn't want me there, it's just I had no purpose there.
Yeah.
And that was the hard part for me, is I felt like I didn't have a purpose anymore.
Yeah.
And when I realized it, you know, I struggled with it, and I realized, okay, well, I have another purpose, and it's my family.
Right.
That's my purpose now. My purpose is not defending the country, or wherever you want to say it. And I feel like not having that controlled chaos in my life, because I needed the structure of the military, and then waking up whenever I wanted to wake up because I wasn't working. Right. So I just helped my wife do stuff around the house. She was still working, but I did stuff around the house. I did some job search, and it was a meh existence.
Right.
Right. And it really affected me. And then when I took a part-time job just to help get out of my own head, I took a part-time job waiting for my job to start. And that kind of helped, but it was the initial culture shock of, I'm out of the military now after over half of my adult life, or half of my life period. I've been part of that team, and I was no longer part of that team. And it was depressing. I was not going to lie.
Yeah.
It wasn't as happy as I thought it was. Like that first few weeks. Oh yeah. It was a party, man. It was great. I was loving it. I was loving the freedom. And then it hit me, hey, you're not in the military anymore. You don't put your uniform on. You're not putting your boots on anymore.
Yeah.
And I found myself like wanting to go hang out at the Chiefs Club. And I found myself wanting to go to events that I was welcome at, but I probably shouldn't, you know what I mean? Like, because I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
I don't want to be that guy who overstays his welcome, so to speak.
Right.
Like, you're the retired guy that shows up. You're at the Chiefs Club every single day, right? After work, or you're at the VFW. Listen, there's nothing wrong with any of those places. I go to them still.
Yeah.
But I want to be that guy that was there every day trying to stay in that life, right? That life was over for me.
Right.
And I didn't want to be hanging on to that, but I had a hard time letting go of it.
Right.
So,
Yeah. And I think the biggest, and I mean, you touched on it a little bit, and I've talked about it before in past episodes. And I think what happens a lot of times is we try to fill that hole.
Yep.
And that hole is never going to be filled again the way it was, because of, one, I think it's the operational status of which we're used to, right? We can't fulfill that. You know, you want a ship, me being in the Army,
right?
You can't run your house.
There's no way there's no way to replicate the amount of stress that you deal with on a daily basis that was part of your life. That to a regular person, to a civilian, they might be like, "Oh my God, I can't handle all this." But you dealt with it on a daily basis for 10 to 12 hours a day, and then all of a sudden, it's gone.
Right? How
do you deal with that?
Yeah, yeah, and I think one of the kind of biggest. The biggest things that, as far as getting out, you touched on it, was purpose. You know, you lose your purpose. You lose your drive, your ambition, because we forget the values that are taught to us, and we're not taught how to apply them when we get out.
Right.
Right. We are a very valuable asset. Transitioning, we're not going to ever be fully civilians anymore.
Right.
Right. You have to kind of get that out of your head. That's why they created the veteran status.
Right.
You are forever changed, and when you go into the civilian world, all right, you're reintroducing yourself as a new person. However you do so is going to either set you up for success or it's going to be a bumpy road. Unfortunately, and I talk about a lot on this podcast, is the military does a really good job of breaking you down and building you up when you're going in,
Right.
to build you into a machine and operate in the functions and the level in which you need to do in your job. But there's still a poor amount of times there's not the setup for success going out.
Right. They do try.
They do try,
but they're not doing a great job of it.
No.
Yeah.
No. It's
Because
like,
once you're gone, that's it. You're done with you.
well, they essentially, it's like, I'm going to try to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but I'm only putting jelly.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. It's very simple. Like job transition,
Right.
It happens all the time in the civilian world. Why? Just because you're under contract with the government, why the transition can't be more seamless?
Right.
Right. It happens all the time in the civilian world. You don't like your job, you put your notice in, you have something already lined up because of it. You put your notice in, you normally start, right after the notice or during your notice or a month later because you take a break for a transition, whatever the case may be. There's not really that, right?
Right.
You can't put your notice in,
Right.
The military.
Give my 2 weeks.
Give my 2 weeks.
I'm glad because I would have done it probably
Deuces.
a dozen times
Yeah.
during my career.
But it's one of those things that there's people millions of times transition different careers
Right.
in the civilian world. But when you're under contract with the military, in either capacity of non-commission or commission, and you even dive into like dual military, right? Where one's got to get out before the other because both get out at the same time. You don't got a paycheck whatsoever.
Yeah.
Right.
Hopefully one's retiring so you can at least have the pension.
Yeah. And it's one of those topics that I don't think it's talked about, but it's not talked enough in depth about.
Right.
Right. Of what can be changed to help progress the transition out of the military.
Right.
Because if you remove stresses of money, homelessness, all these stuff where we're fortunate enough where we've landed our feet, right? But there's many people, tens of thousands, that haven't.
Yep.
Right. And the astronomical percentage of the homeless population that are Americans, right? It is, I think it was like a quarter. I think it was like a quarter of the homeless population are veterans.
That's crazy.
Like it was an astronomical percentage, right? That's wrong.
100%.
Granted, you got those crusty vets that don't want nothing.
Right.
They rather sleep in the woods, sleep in the car, whatever the case may be. They don't want to listen to nobody. They don't want no help. They don't want to go through the system.
Right.
It is what it is.
You can't change that. But then there's other guys who just struggle and they don't know what to do.
Right. And I think the information of how to get help, right? Not just mental health or anything, but financial help or going through the VA process of, stuff that you have going on, you could get benefits for. You're entitled to those. You earn them, right? And a lot of people get that mindset of, either somebody else earned more than me or, that's not me. Like, I don't want nothing, until like the mortgage is due, right? then it's like, no, you earned your benefits.
Right.
Just go get them. Right. Just go get them. The process sucks. Right. It's not the best, but it's because the system is overwhelmed right now.
Right.
You know, that's why there's these mishaps going on with the VA.
Yeah. And that's another area that I thought President Trump did a great job.
Yeah.
Right. Because under the administration before him, the VA was really suffering, which was right around, it was during my time transitioning out. And I was it 2016 he got elected, right? And there was a lot of problems with the VA.
Right.
And I mean, it was national news how bad the VA was. And that was one of his first things that he did was try to redo that entire system.
Yeah.
And I think has helped.
Oh, the biggest one with that was community care.
Yeah.
Right. You know, so before you would have to go through the VA to be able to submit any findings, even before getting benefits.
Right.
Right. So now you can go to your primary, you can go get your findings, and they'll compare it with your file.
Right.
Or you get, you know, if you need nexus letters, whatever the case may be, you can do that afterwards. But you can go to your primary. You don't have to wait in line at the VA to schedule an appointment.
Yeah, waiting for God only knows how long.
And then even, you know, and like today, I just had an MRI appointment, you know, and one, they don't tell you that they're doing like 3 or 4 separate tests all at once.
Right.
Right. And we just talked about this. Like, I honestly kind of want to feel like what it's like getting buried alive.
Yeah.
Because I would not wish I had the excruciating headache.
No.
I couldn't move. You know, there's this, I felt like Hannibal Lecter, like
in the cage.
in the cage,
The MRI machine.
you know, MRI machine, you know, but, you know, one thing when I got into the VA system and started collecting my disability benefits, and here's my thing is, I think the terms disability, and people got to get out of the mindset of like, it's not holding you back.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Disabled or disability doesn't mean I'm wheelchair bound or I can't do things.
Or even if you're wheelchair, like, so I met this amazing individual and he is a big part of Veterans Rally Point. Dave Stevens, he's at the Super Bowl right now. He's
good for him.
Freaking media row, like doing the whole 9 yards. You know, his stories, if anybody has not checked out Dave Stevens' story, he was born with no legs, right? Played sports, like did not allow anything to hold him back.
Right.
Right. So like anybody out there that like thinks that, you know, you're going to use it as a crutch, you're doing it because you don't want to push yourself.
Right.
Right. Or you're scared to push yourself. Right. Me, with my back and how bad my back is, you know, a few years back, I stopped working out because I'm like, I'm going to paralyze myself. The next time I try to do a deadlift, I'm going to paralyze myself. Right. And, you know, it was one of those things where it's like, I scared myself out of staying physically fit.
Right.
You know, now like I look like a donut, you know, but, you know, it was one of those things where like mentally it screwed with me so bad.
Yep.
Right. And it put me in a deep depression, you know, like it was bad, really bad, because I went from, you know, and every veteran knows, like, you go from operating at a certain level, right? Running like 1430, 2 miles and doing 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups. And then your legs just have lightning bolts going down them.
Yeah.
And,
I was there, man.
You know, it's like,
I'm a year, 13 months now removed from a fusion.
Yeah.
So I felt that pain for 3 years. I had awful pain.
Yeah. And you know, it's been going on for years. But the point is, you know, I mentally allowed my mindset to go in a different direction.
Right.
You know, and on top of it, I was allowing others to kind of dictate to me, you know, how I should feel about it, you know, feel about myself and everything else. I'm not the type of person, I really don't care to have a conversation with you, you know, You know, if you got nothing, you know,
Right.
positive to say, you know, and it's not until like recent years, you know, and I've been out of active duty 2012, you know, officially completely got out in 2017. You know, but along the way, you know, I picked up this thing, Control Alt Delete.
Yeah.
Right. And I didn't make it up, you know, but it makes sense. And like in the military world, acronyms are like the thing, right?
Right.
We relate
Yeah.
to it.
It's all-
Control
all the
Alt
acronyms.
Delete,
Yeah.
right? You control yourself, control your emotions, slow yourself down, you alter your mindset, and you delete the negativity,
I like that.
you know? And I started like, at first, I'm like, that's kind of corny. Control Alt Delete on my keyboard, right? But then I'm like sitting there, I'm like, and I started kind of thinking about it more in depth of how can I apply this really to my life in every situation, every aspect. I'm not perfect. I'm still a work in progress, and I will continue to be a work in progress. Because if you plateau in life, that means that you're willing to stop learning, right? You're willing to stop growing, right? When you allow yourself to plateau. So always use Control Alt Delete, because there's going to be haters out there. There's going to be people that tell you you can't do it. There's going to be people that are going to say you're doing it for the wrong reasons. If you feel that it is for the right reasons, you're being a good person and you're pushing yourself far past your abilities to challenge yourself, not because somebody else told you to do it, then go do it.
Right.
As long as you have the good intent, and we talked about that, as long as your intent don't stink, why not?
Right.
You know? And it really stuck with me, and I've used it for a while now. I forget sometimes to use it, but I'm only human, you know?
It happens.
But it is what it is.
Yep.
It is what it is. So I appreciate you coming through.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. Finally get together, man.
Been a great episode. I think we covered a lot.
Yeah. We did. I think we did.
We did. We went like
We got to save some stuff for the next time, man.
we went all over the place.
I know. That's all right.
Like,
It's good. It's good. It's just like we're friends talking friends, man. That's
like
it.
just veteran, just
Yep.
regurgitation.
The things that vets think about and
Yeah.
talk about, man.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, you know, even down to the logo, you know, yeah, it's a podcast. We got headphones. First glance, you go, that's why I used headphones.
Right.
I chose that because sometimes we need to slow down and just listen to each other.
Great point.
You know?
Yep.
Learn something. You know? That's it. That's pretty much it. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me.
All right. You guys, if you guys go check out Scott Freyer on his social media account, you can go see him. He does some podcasting. He's a veteran podcaster, seasoned. He is coaching right now.
Coaching lacrosse
Right now. And love having him on the show. And you know, Navy, Army, go Army, beat Navy. Is what it is. The rivals continue. Guys, I appreciate everybody. Go check out everlastingveteran.com. Also, go check out podcasttables.shop. The beautiful table in which we're sitting at.
Great table, by the way.
Is a new sponsor for Everlasting Veteran. Sent me out this table to be able to podcast in a professional setting. And go check out Rockin' Frenchies and Meadow Ridge Wimes and Danes. They're pillars of the dog program for Everlasting Veteran, helping us get dogs out to veterans, the future service dogs of Everlasting Veteran. I appreciate everybody. This is Ryan Landry, host with Scott Freyer.
From the cannons, when the smoke clears, we're still standing.
Bulldog 3-3, patch 8 November, fire for effect, over. Enemy OP on hilltop, over.
When the smoke clears, we're still standing.